Hey everyone, welcome to Princess Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are here with my blind reaction to One Piece episode 1075. So we are closing out the fight with Kaido. Momo is being motivated to continue to try and stop Onigashima. And last time we got a new opening, which I have watched again and again and again. I watched it with other people's reactions. I watched it on my own. And yeah, I still don't like it. And it's almost purely because of the opening bit. Like like pretty much the first half of it is just showing like that circle with all like the old scenes inside the middle of it. It's like very small there. And my problem with that is it's so boring to watch. Because it's like you can barely see what's going on in the circle. It's not like super clear. And on top of that, it's so small and everything around it is just blank except for like a shadow that moves across the screen for a second. It's like it feels like nothing is happening for like the first half of the opening. And then once Luffy kind of breaks in and everything just starts to go way too fast at that point. It's like the complete opposite problem. Everything starts to go way too fast where it's like you don't have a chance to focus on anything. You don't have a chance to enjoy anything. You have to pause and pause and pause multiple times just to be able to see most of what's going on. You're not going to catch everything on your first viewing. You're going to have to stop it and pause it and go through it all very slowly to catch everything. And I don't like it when openings do that. I'm fine with an opening like having little things that you might not catch unless you do that. But when pretty much the entire opening is that, it's just, you feel cheated, you know? You feel cheated because you don't get to enjoy the opening just as it is. You have to analyze it just to understand anything. And again, I said it before, but it is visually very good at those parts. Even though it's going too fast, like, the visuals are beautiful. The animation on them is gorgeous. It's nothing to do with that. The song is great. The issue specifically comes down to the pacing of the opening, how it's paced out, how it's handled. It's the execution more than anything. And I just feel like it wasn't done well. If you wanted to have the circle thing with the flashback stuff at the beginning, that's fine. But you needed to shorten that to like maybe a third of what it actually was in terms of time, and got into the actual action and cool stuff quicker. And then doing that would also allow you to slow it down and allow you to be able to, you know, focus on things without it just blasting past. Because the thing is, this opening is clearly meant to be a post-Wano opening. Like, it's meant to focus on the end of the fight with Kaido and the stuff that happens post-Wano afterwards, before we get into the final saga and the Egghead Island arc, in which we'll definitely be getting another opening. And that's fine. It's completely fine to have a special opening just for the post-Wano stuff. In fact, I think that's a great idea. But when it comes to a post-arc, whether it be post-Water 7, post-Marineford, etc., these arcs are meant to bring you back down from the highs that the arcs previously had given you. Water 7 and Enies Lobby were like such highs, so just like blasting things at you. Big reveals, big moments, huge stakes. Same with Marineford. And then they have a post arc to kind of just bring you down, bring you back to earth, just to calm you down. And they still have some big reveals and stuff. Post Water 7 has some huge reveals, has some huge moments. But overall, it's calm. It brings you back to the calm after the storm. And again, post Marineford is the same way. It has a lot of big moments. It gives massive info, as well as pushes us into what is going to become the post time skip stuff. But overall, it still is the calm after the big war that just happened, the war of the best. And that's what's needed. So when you have an opening that's rushing 100 miles a minute, constantly just go, 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 without taking a breath and stopping it all, that's the problem. Having having it go so fast and just like rushing past everything would work for a very action heavy point in the story. It would work for something like Marineford, where it's just constant, big moment after big moment, constant, huge rushing through the story and everything. Not in terms of pacing, but in terms of what the story is focused on and all of that. But with this, it's like this would feel more natural to something like that. Although the first half kind of ruins that as well anyway. But the rushing through this in the second half of this opening, for a post arc, feels out of place. The first half actually feels more on point with that. But again, the problem is nothing's happening during it. It's just clips of stuff that has previously happened in the show that you can barely see amongst a white, just blank background, basically. But the speed and tone of it fits more than the second half, which just feels like just chill the fuck out. And even if there's some big stuff that's going to happen, again, it's still a post arc. It's still going to overall be the calm after the storm. Again, comparing to post Water 7 and post Marineford. Again, big stuff did happen in those two post arcs. But still. Honestly, I can't get into it. It's unlike the previous ones for this arc, which I said this one I'm not completely sold on, but maybe after watching I'll get more into it, and I did, like with the last opening especially. But I've tried to get into this new one, and again, the visuals look beautiful, and the actual shots themselves, once you slow them down or pause them to see what they are, look great, and they fit the characters and everything. The music is great. All of that's fine. It's just I can't get into the opening just from a viewing perspective, because I would have to slow it down and pause it and everything every time to even slightly be able to appreciate it. And that's not worth it. So I'm probably going to be skipping this opening most often, which is very surprising because I usually don't do that with One Piece. And I haven't done it with any of the Wano openings to my knowledge. But I really, really don't like how this opening is executed. So unfortunately, I think it's the best choice I have here. Because otherwise, I'm just gonna be either bored or annoyed every time I watch it. And I don't want that to affect my experience watching the rest of the episode after. So, yeah, we're just going to skip past that, go straight into the episode. Unless there's a cold open. If there's a cold open, I'll obviously watch that first, but we'll probably still skip it most, if not all of the time. I'll continue to try and get into it on my own time, and maybe this will change. Maybe I eventually will get into it, and maybe then we'll start watching it more. But again, it's like, it's not the actual content within it specifically, it's the execution and pacing of the content, how that's done. But anyway, we're just gonna get this started, and I don't know if it's this episode or next episode, but this fight with Kaido is definitely gonna be ending, and I'm excited to see how it ends. So let's do this. When the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then it fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. Fuck, man. Like, One Piece makes me cry, and this arc has made me cry for sure. But it's like, Jesus, like, I mean, it wasn't just the tears. It was also like the raw anger at Orochi and everything. Like, again, even more than Kaido or Doflamingo or other villains, I think I hate Orochi the most because of the shit he's done and the superiority complex and everything. Like, it's not to discount any of the other villains on what they've done and shit. Like, obviously, Doflamingo is absolutely despisable. Absolutely, terrible. Horty Jones, obviously, very fucked up. Kaido, clearly. But Orochi is just in a completely different league for me. Just in terms of pure hateability. Like, it's not even just about everything he's done. He is such an actively hateable character. Not just unlikable, hateable. And I have to give Oda, obviously, the massive credit here for writing his character to be this despisable. Like, he has zero redeeming qualities. There's absolutely not a single fucking thing that makes this absolute cunt even slightly likable or redeemable in any way. He is just so horrifically evil that his death, and I assume this is the final one, especially based on the imagery and everything, his death is so satisfying, and not just satisfying, but relieving. Like, I feel relieved that this shit stain is finally dead. Like, I'm not, obviously, it's fiction and everything, and I'm not obviously in that kind of scenario, being subjugated and victimized by him. And I know that, again, these are fictional characters, but I feel just such huge relief for the entire country of Wano. It's masterful storytelling. That you hate this character so much, and that despite knowing that this is obviously all fiction, you still just feel like relief that people are going to be safer with him dead. It's so wild that Oda could craft a villain this absolutely detestable. He might actually be the most detestable villain in anything I've ever seen. I'm not even kidding you here. Like, when I was like sitting here during the reaction, I got really quiet and I started to cry and everything. One thing you definitely wouldn't have noticed is I was like gripping my hands really tightly. Like, I'll show you like what I was doing. Like, I was doing this like really tightly, like gripping my hands into a fist. I recently cut my nails. If I hadn't, I possibly could have drawn blood. um, I was that angry. Like, again, it wasn't just like crying from like sorrow or anything. I was aggressively angry. And if you've watched my reactions and my videos for any length of time, you have probably seen me get like this before. When I get really, really emotional to this kind of degree, especially when it comes to anger, I don't I don't vocalize anger. I tend to get very quiet. I tend to seethe. And I've talked about this before, but that's usually how I handle anger. The angrier I am, the quieter I am. It's very rare that I actually like get vocal about anger, and it's happened. It's happened on this channel with various reactions, but it's just not super common. It's rare that that happens. It has to be something that I really am like angry enough to need to yell about, but that's not what I normally do. So I'm just sitting there. I got very quiet and I was digging into my fists and just especially when the scene with Ebisu Town and the defective smiles came into play. Like once that started and everything, I was like already very upset by that point. But when it like showed like this town that was like everything that had been going on, all these people like starving and resorting to the poison, the noose that was shown there clearly to represent that. Oh yeah, a lot of people probably committed suicide during these 20 years because they couldn't handle this literal hell. But then it goes to people of Ebisu Town and it shows them like, oh, we got fruit. Is this fruit we can finally eat? Like the instant that was said, I knew exactly what it was talking about, and I like, I was screaming internally. Let's put it that way. I was very angry because that I think more than anything, I think that's the most anger-inducing thing from this arc for me. Out of all of the stuff that specifically, for some reason, bothered me the most, the defective smile fruits being forced on them and them eating them because, you know, they needed food and everything, and now being forced to not be able to visibly show other emotions and shit, it's like, I talked about it last week, but Toko, like, is Precious Baby, and I am very, very attached to her, and she's a victim of this. Her father was a victim of this, and he died in front of her, and I just keep remembering the scene of that, of her laughing, yelling, crying out, "My father is dead." And I keep remembering Zoro's reaction and then Hiyori stopping him and telling him what's going on. It's just like, my blood is boiling. And it's just like, I'm just... It seems like Orochi is dead for good now. And that is a good thing. There's certain things that just really like affect me like that. And not just even in fiction, in real life, there are certain like evil people in the world who just like I cannot for any life of me like forgive. For there's no reason, there's no um active way that I can forgive or excuse the actions of certain people. Like there's some whose actions I can like say like okay, self-defense, or you're stealing to provide for yourself or your family or stuff like that. But then it's like when it comes to people like rapists, when it comes to people like Nazis, it's like there's nothing in me that has the strength to forgive. There's nothing in me that has the strength to even say that they deserve a second chance. When it comes to people like rapists and Nazis, they're like the only kinds of people in real life who I genuinely believe not only deserve to die, but should die to make the world safer and better. I believe that their existence is such a stain on the world that if the world is to become a better place, if the world is to be in a better state than we left it in, they have to die. That sounds harsh, that sounds really extreme, but there's just it's only those kinds of people. But I can't for any sense of logic find a way to even believe that they should be imprisoned for life. I don't believe those kinds of people should exist in the world. They are pure evil. So with animation like this, with fiction in general, I guess, it's a lot easier to say this kind of stuff because they're not real people. It's fiction. It's like it doesn't affect real life necessarily. Like I can play Mortal Kombat. Speaking of that, because that's going to be coming out in the next week. I can play Mortal Kombat, see all these fatalities and all these deaths and stuff, and it's like that's not going to affect anything of my thoughts on real people. And I can watch a show like this with my extreme hatred towards Orochi, and that wouldn't affect my thoughts towards people. But there are certain people in real life that get me as heated, if not more, than Orochi in this series. Actually, I would say more just because they're real. Just the fact that they're real gets me even more heated than for a fictional character. But the reason I'm going into all of this is that despite that, Orochi is really damn close to that level of hatred for me. And I'm not going to lie, it is hatred. It is extreme hatred that I have for people like that. And for Orochi, even as a fictional character, it is just such an intense rage. And it, again, even though he's a fictional character, my mindset goes to that idea of the world would be better off without him in it. He not only deserves to die, but needs to die for the betterment of the world. And so seeing his death here, like I said, is extremely satisfying, but also extremely relieving. Because it feels like this world that we're watching in this fictional anime, or the manga as well, is safer now, is in a better place without him in it. Honestly, just I almost just kind of want to move on. Like to not even give him the not what's the word? I was gonna say honor, but that's definitely not the right word. Not even give him the ability to be remembered. Just forget about him, wipe him from the history of Wano. That would be preferable. Just wipe away everything that he has left behind, all of his influence, and start new. And to not even think about it anymore. That would be the best scenario in my eyes with how this could go. Because we don't need his legacy being remembered. We don't need his influences being remembered. He needs to be forgotten. That would, I feel, hurt him more than anything. And that's the preferable option. But I also, at the same time, would love to see everybody just actively shitting on his legacy and his history and with Wano and everything. Because fuck him. And honestly, at this point, I don't think we've seen a Kurozumi clan member who we can say otherwise to. Like, all of the Kurozumi clan members I think we've seen have all been these terrible pieces of shit. We had the two elders who helped Orochi down this path. We had Orochi himself. We had Kanjuro. And luckily, they're all fucking dead where they belong. And then, on top of all of that, sorry for venting there for a bit, but on top of all of that, I also cried because Momo was seeing visions of his late parents and his sister motivating him to act and to move Onigashima and everything, and it's like that's just making me like emotional as fuck as well. It's like, okay, you're gonna just really pull that on me now? I am in an emotionally vulnerable state at the moment. This is not okay. This series. But yeah, because of all of this flashback stuff and everything, because of all of this basically world building, you can say, building on the stuff we already knew, but still, we have to wait till next episode to see the final hit. Nothing really happened with the actual fight in this episode. Outside of Kaido just setting himself on fire. Like, nothing, like, they didn't really actually attack each other in this episode at all. This was more about Orochi's death, hopefully final death. If he's not fucking dead here, I'm gonna be fucking pissed. It's like, but also about all of Wano needing this liberation. All of Wano having waited 20 years to be freed. You saw in the lanterns they were letting loose. People praying literally for Orochi to die, for the world to be safer, for them to be freed. literally putting this in their prayers to the heavens. Because this country, again, for 20 years has been victimized and horribly mistreated. People have been violently, horrifically murdered, have died due to having to drink poisoned water due to lack of other options, and have 100% committed suicide just to escape from this hell. It's probably the most horrific situation any island that we've been to in this series has been in. And it's finally, this 20-year hell is finally coming to an end. The prayers of the citizens are being heard. But they're not just being heard, they're being answered. Wano is going to be free. Which is obvious anyways, because we know Luffy's going to win in the end here. we knew that from the beginning, but still. The point is, it's time. It's time for Wano to be free. It's time for this all to come to an end. So, yeah, very emotional episode. Sorry for rambling on about this and getting very serious and intense and emotional. But it's like, the fact that this series can do this to me is insanely impressive. And it continues to show why this is my favorite piece of media of all time. Why One Piece is this important to me, that it can cause this heavy of an emotional reaction for something that's just fictional. But that being said, I think we'll end this here, because otherwise I'm just going to start, like, rambling again. Tell me your thoughts on this episode. Let me know what you thought of all of the flashback stuff. Again, even if it's stuff we've never seen, it's still technically flashback stuff. Tell me what you thought of the emotional weight of everything. And for now, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Connie. I'm signing off. See y'all next time.